How are you guys doing? Today is Saturday, April 10th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, of course, I'm going to review all the elite matchups and performances from yesterday, Friday, April 9th, and of course, I'm going to preview everything that's going on today as we navigate through the world of sports one day at a time. With the NFL season officially being over, I'm going to start with the NBA just to look at what was going on out there, starting with the first primetime performance of the night. The New York Knicks hosted the Memphis Grizzlies as two teams fighting at the bottom of their playoff pictures faced off. And in this game, the New York Knicks would beat the Grizzlies at home in overtime 103-29 as they picked up their 26th win of the season, beating the Memphis Grizzlies. For the Grizzlies last night, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward out of Oregon, Dillon Brooks, who finished with 23 points and 5 assists in 40 minutes as he shot 9 for 18 from the field and 2 for 3 from the foul line. Alongside him, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard out of Murray State, Ja Morant, who finished with 26 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists in 39 minutes as he shot 9 for 18 from the field, 4 for 5 from 3, and 4 for 8 from the foul line. And then their starting center, Jonas Valanciunas, would finish with 20 points, 14 rebounds and 3 blocks in 36 minutes as he shot 8 for 11 from the field, 1 for 1 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. For the New York Knicks in this matchup, one of their leading scorers would come off the bench as Emmanuel Quickley would finish with 20 points in 31 minutes. He shot 7 for 12 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. The leading scorer amongst the starters and tied for the team high in scoring would be their starting shooting guard out of Duke, RJ Barrett, who finished with 20 points and 5 rebounds in 34 minutes, shooting 7 for 13 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and he would go on to shoot 4 for 5 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their all-star power forward Julius Randle would finish with 15 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists in 38 minutes as he shot 4 for 12 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and 6 for 9 from the foul line. With this win, the New York Knicks are now 26-27. That is the 8th best record in the Eastern Conference as they have now won 5 of their last 10 games. In the Eastern playoff picture, they sit 1 game behind the 7th place Boston Celtics, and they currently sit 1 game ahead of the 9th place Indiana Pacers, who are on the outside looking in. Overall, they trail the Brooklyn Nets by 10.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the Memphis Grizzlies are now 26-24. That is the 8th best record in the Western Conference. With this loss, they've still won 6 of their last 10 games. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they sit 2.5 games behind the 7th place Dallas Mavericks, and they sit 2 games ahead of the 9th place San Antonio Spurs, who are now on the outside looking in. Overall, the Memphis Grizzlies trailed the first place Utah Jazz by 12 games in the Western Conference, even though they're still holding on to that last playoff spot in the Western Conference. Jumping out to San Francisco, the Golden State Warriors hosted the Washington Wizards last night, and in this matchup, the Wizards would beat the Warriors 110-107. The biggest difference would come in the first, where they outscored Golden State by 9 and carried that momentum for the rest of the game. For the Warriors in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their goated starting point guard, Steph Curry, who finished with 32 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals in 35 minutes, as he shot 11 for 25 from the field, 5 for 12 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the foul line. Their starting shooting guard, Kelly Oubre Jr., would finish with 23 points and 6 rebounds in 37 minutes as he shot 8 for 13 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the line. For the Washington Wizards last night, their leading scorer would be their starting power forward out of Gonzaga, Rui Hachimura, who finished with 22 points and 5 rebounds in 38 minutes, shooting 9 for 16 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the line. Their elite starting shooting guard, Bradley Beal, would finish with 20 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, and 6 turnovers in 30 minutes, shooting 7 for 16 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the foul line. Off the bench, their center, out of Stanford, Robin Lopez, would finish with 20 points and 8 rebounds in 27 minutes as he shot 9 for 14 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. And last but not least, their elite starting point guard, Russell Westbrook, would finish with 19 points, 14 rebounds, and 14 assists, as well as six turnovers, as he currently leads the league in triple doubles. He did all this in 37 minutes as he shot 8 for 17 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, and 2 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Washington Wizards are now 19-32. They are now tied with the Cleveland Cavaliers for the third worst record in the Eastern Conference. They've now won their last 2 games. They've only won 4 of their last 10. They currently trail the New York Knicks by 6 games outside of the playoff picture, as they trail the Brooklyn Nets by 16.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the Golden State Warriors are now 24-28. That is the 10th best record in the Western Conference. With this loss, they've now lost 8 of their last 10 games. They sit 3 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, as they now trail the first place Utah Jazz by 15 games in the conference, following last night's primetime performance. Jumping out to Orlando, the Orlando Magic hosted the Indiana Pacers, and in this matchup, the Pacers would beat the Magic 111-106. The difference would come in the first half, where the Pacers outscored the Magic by a total of 13 points. For the Magic in this matchup, their leading scorer will come off the bench as their shooting guard Terrence Ross would finish with 24 points in 28 minutes, shooting 10 for 15 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 2 for 3 from the foul line. For the Indiana Pacers, their leading scorer will come off the bench as their point guard Aaron Holiday would finish with 20 points in 23 minutes, shooting 7 for 14 from the field and 6 for 10 from 3. Their all-star starting power forward would lead the starters in scoring, as Domantas Sabonis would finish with 16 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists, as well as 2 blocks in 33 minutes, shooting 3 for 12 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and 9 for 12 from the foul line. With this win, the Indiana Pacers are now 24-27. That is the 9th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won their last 2 games and 5 of their last 10. They now sit 1 game behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, as they both have the same amount of losses, but the Knicks have 2 more wins. And they currently sit 11.5 games behind the first place Brooklyn Nets in the entire conference. With this loss, the Orlando Magic are now 17-35. That is the 2nd worst record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now lost their last 4 games. They've now lost 7 of their last 10. They currently sit 8.5 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the playoff picture, and they now trail the first place Brooklyn Nets by 19 games in the conference. Jumping out to Boston, the Boston Celtics hosted the Minnesota Timberwolves, and in a game that went to overtime, Jason Tatum would put up the performance of his career to help the Celtics win their 27th game of the season. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center out of Kentucky, Karl Anthony Towns, who finished with 30 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, and 6 steals, or 6 turnovers in 42 minutes, as he shot 10 for 22 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Off the bench, their elite point guard D'Angelo Russell in his return would finish with 26 points, 4 rebounds, and 8 assists in 29 minutes, as he shot 10 for 18 from the field, 3 for 9 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. And back to their starting lineup, their number 1 overall pick from the 2020 NBA draft out of Georgia, Anthony Edwards, would finish with 24 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in 40 minutes, as he shot 7 for 12 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 8 for 8 from the foul line. For the Boston Celtics in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting small forward out of Duke, Jason Tatum, who hit a career high last night. He finished with 53 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 5 turnovers in 41 minutes, as he shot 16 for 25 from the field, 6 for 10 from 3, and 15 for 16 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their all-star shooting guard Jaylen Brown would finish with 26 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and 5 turnovers in 44 minutes, as he shot 9 for 15 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. And their starting point guard Marcus Smart would finish with 24 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 steals in 41 minutes, as he shot 7 for 12 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and 6 for 7 from the line. And their elite starting point guard Kemba Walker would finish with 17 points, 7 rebounds, 9 9 assists and 2 steals in 39 minutes as he shot 5 for 14 from the field, 3 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. With this win, the Boston Celtics are now 27-26. That is the 7th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won their last 2 games and 6 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now sit half a game behind the 6th place reigning Eastern Conference champions Miami Heat, and they now sit 1 full game ahead of the 8th place New York Knicks, as they currently trail the Brooklyn Nets by 9.5 games in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now 13-40, as they had now hold the worst record in the Western Conference and the worst record in the entire NBA for that matter. They've now lost their last 2 games and 7 of their last 10. They currently sit 14.5 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, and they now trail the first place Utah Jazz by 26.5 games in the Western Conference. Jumping out to Atlanta, the Atlanta Hawks hosted the Chicago Bulls, and the Hawks would be able to beat the Bulls 120-108 after they outscored the Bulls by 25 points in the second half, after they were trailing by 13 at halftime. For the Chicago Bulls, Zach LaVine would put up his career high, but of course they would fall short by 12. For the Bulls in this matchup, their all-star shooting guard would finish with 50 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists in 39 minutes as he shot 18 for 31 from the field, 7 for 12 from 3, and 7 for 8 from the foul line, as 39 of his 50 points came in the first half. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their all-star center Nikola Vucevic would finish with 25 points, 10 rebounds, and a couple of assists in 36 minutes as he shot 11 for 19 from the field and 3 for 5 from the foul line. For the Atlanta Hawks in this matchup, their elite starting point guard Trae Young would lead the team in scoring, he led the team in scoring. He finished with 42 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists in 38 minutes as he shot 15 for 25 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, and 11 for 14 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting center Clint Capella would finish with 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 37 minutes as he shot 10 for 12 from the field and 2 for 3 from the foul line. And off the bench, their power forward, Danilo Gallinari, would finish with 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals in 30 minutes as he shot 6 for 16 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Atlanta Hawks are now 28-25. That is the 5th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won 6 of their last 10 games. With 1 more win and 1 more loss than the Charlotte Hornets, they sit about even in the playoff picture. And in the playoff picture, both the Hawks and the Hornets sit 4.5 games behind the 3rd place Milwaukee Bucks. And they currently sit half a game ahead of the 6th place defending champs Miami Heat in the conference, as they both trail the Brooklyn Nets by 8.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the Chicago Bulls are now 22-29. That is the 10th best record in the Eastern Conference. They have now lost 7 of their last 10 games. With this one, they sit 3 games outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture behind the 8th place New York Knicks, and they now trail the Brooklyn Nets by 13.5 games in the Eastern Conference as a whole. Jumping out to New Orleans, the New Orleans Pelicans hosted the Philadelphia 76ers as the Sixers tried to reclaim, or at least try to tie up with the Nets for the best record in the Eastern Conference. But in this game, the Pelicans would beat the Sixers 101-94. The difference would come in the third quarter, where they outscored Philadelphia by 8. Every other quarter was virtually incredibly close. For the Sixers in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting power forward, Tobias Harris, who finished with 23 points and 7 rebounds in 34 minutes as he shot 7 for 16 from the field and 7 for 9 from the foul line. Their elite starting center, Joel Embiid, would finish with 14 points and 9 rebounds and 2 blocks in 31 minutes as he shot 5 for 16 from the field and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. And their elite starting point guard, Ben Simmons, would finish with 10 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and 5 steals, as well as 6 turnovers in 34 minutes, as he shot 3 for 6 from the field and 4 for 9 from the foul line. For the New Orleans Pelicans, the leading scorer of the entire matchup would be their elite starting power forward out of Duke, Zion Williamson, who finished with 37 points, 15 rebounds, and 8 assists in 35 minutes as he shot 15 for 28 from the field and 7 for 11 from the foul line. And then their elite starting small forward, Brandon Ingram out of Duke, would finish with 17 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals in 35 minutes as he shot 5 for 21 from the field, 2 for 9 from 3, and 5 for 6 for the foul line. This is the first game he's been back in a while. With this win, the New Orleans Pelicans are now 23-29. That is the 5th worst record in the Western Conference, as they have now won 5 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 4 games outside of the Western Conference playoff picture behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies, and they trailed the Utah Jazz by 16 games in the Western Conference. With this loss, the Philadelphia 76ers are now 35-17. That is the 2nd best record in the Eastern Conference, and even with this loss, they've still won 6 of their last 10 games. In the playoff picture, they now sit 1 game behind the first place Brooklyn Nets, and they now sit 3 games ahead of the 3rd place Milwaukee Bucks following this loss, just to show where the 76ers are in the conference. Jumping out to Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Bucks hosted the Charlotte Hornets, as the Hornets were able to give the Bucks their 3rd straight loss of the season, just to show, of course, that they really need their MVP after all. The big difference, of course, would come, they in the middle quarters, Charlotte would outscore Milwaukee by 6 in the second, 8 in the third, and they already outscored them by 5 in the first. It was kind of gradual over the first 3 quarters, and the Bucks would really kind of come back in garbage time. For the Bucks in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward out of Louisville, Jordan Nwora, who finished with 24 points and 6 rebounds in 32 minutes, shooting 9 for 16 from the field, 4 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. For the Charlotte Hornets, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward out of Michigan State, Miles Bridges, who finished with 26 points and 7 rebounds alongside 2 blocks in 37 minutes, as he shot 8 for 13 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Their starting power forward, Devontae Graham, would finish with 20 points and 5 assists in 26 minutes, shooting 6 for 12 from the field, all 12 of his attempts and 6 of his makes coming from 3, so he was 6 for 12 from 3, and he was a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. And then their starting shooting guard, Scary Terry Rozier, would finish with 20 points in 33 minutes, shooting 8 for 17 from the field and 1 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Charlotte Hornets are now 27-24. That is the 4th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they've now won their last 2 games and 7 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they are even with the Atlanta Hawks with 1 less win and 1 less loss, like I mentioned earlier. And both these teams are sitting 4.5 games behind the 3rd place Milwaukee Bucks, and they sit half a game ahead of the 6th place Miami Heat, as the Charlotte Hornets now trail the Brooklyn Nets by 8.5 games in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, the Milwaukee Bucks are now 32-20. They have now lost their last 3 games and 6 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, even without their best player, they still sit 3 games behind the 2nd place Philadelphia 76ers and 4.5 games ahead of the 4th place Charlotte Hornets and the 5th place Atlanta Hawks at the moment, as they currently trail the Brooklyn Nets by 4 total games in the conference. Jumping out to Denver, the Denver Nuggets hosted the San Antonio Spurs, and in this matchup, the Nuggets would beat the Spurs 121-119. The difference would be the first quarter, where they outscored San Antonio by 10 and carried that momentum through the end of the game. For San Antonio in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting point guard, Devin White, who finished with 25 points and 3 steals in 34 minutes. He shot 9 for 16 from the field and 4 for 5 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, DeMar DeRozan, would finish with 24 points and 12 assists in 37 minutes, as he shot 8 for 14 from the field and a perfect 8 for 8 from the foul line. For the Denver Nuggets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center, Nikola Jokic, who finished with 26 points, 13 rebounds, and 14 assists. Yet another triple-double for the Joker, as he also finished with 6 turnovers. He played 38 minutes as he shot 9 for 17 from the field, a perfect 2 for 2 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting small forward out of Missouri, Michael Porter Jr., would finish with 22 points and 10 rebounds in 40 minutes, as he shot 8 for 15 from the field and 4 for 5 from the foul line. And then off the bench, their point guard Monte Morris would finish with 21 points in 25 minutes, shooting 7 for 8 from the field, a perfect 5 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Denver Nuggets now hold a 34-18 record. That is the 4th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now won their last 8 games. They, of course, have the best winning streak in the Western Conference and in the NBA for that matter. They have now won 9 of their last 10 games. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit a game behind the third place Los Angeles Clippers, and they now sit 2 games ahead of the fifth place defending NBA champs Los Angeles Lakers, as they now trail the Utah Jazz by 5 games in the Western Conference. With this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 24-26. That is the 9th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now lost their last 5 games, and they've now lost 8 of their last 10. They currently trail the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies by 2 games outside of the Western Conference playoff picture, as they now trail the Utah Jazz by 14 total games in the conference with this loss. Jumping out to Los Angeles for the last basketball game of the night, the Los Angeles Clippers hosted the Houston Rockets, and in this matchup, like they were supposed to, they ended up beating the Rockets 126-109. The biggest difference would be the second quarter, where they outscored the Rockets 31. They outscored them 41-10 to pick up their 36th win of the season. For the Houston Rockets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting center, Christian Wood, who finished with 23 points and 3 blocks in 31 minutes, shooting 9 for 15 from the field on the night. For the Los Angeles Clippers, their leading scorer would be their goated starting small forward, Kawhi Leonard, who finished with 31 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists in 33 minutes, as the Claw shot 11 for 20 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and 6 for 7 from the foul line. Their starting point guard, Reggie Jackson, would finish with 26 points, 7 assists, and 2 steals in 30 minutes, as he shot 10 for 14 from the field and 6 for 9 from 3. With this win, the Los Angeles Clippers are now 36-18. That is the 3rd best record in the Western Conference, as they have now won their last 4 games. They've now won 8 of their last 10. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit a game and a half behind the second place Phoenix Suns, and they now sit a full game ahead of the 4th place Denver Nuggets, as they now trail the Utah Jazz by 4 games in the West. With this loss, the Houston Rockets are now 14-18. That is the 2nd worst record in the Western Conference. They've now lost 8 of their last 10 games. They sit 13 games outside of the Western Conference playoff picture behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies, and they now trail the 1st place Utah Jazz by 25 games in the entire conference. So that's what the NBA is looking like following yesterday's matchups. Looking forward to what's going on today in the league. Of course, today is Saturday, so looking at the prime times, at 8:30, the Brooklyn Nets are going to host the Los Angeles Lakers on ABC. Kevin Durant is officially back. This will be his first start. And, of course, the Lakers are still missing their best 2 players, so it looks to be a slaughter. So Kevin Durant might drop 50 tonight. And then that's going to be the only primetime game. But looking at the games that aren't on primetime, at 7:30, the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to host the Toronto Raptors. At 9 o'clock, the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to host the 76ers. At the same time, the Utah Jazz, the current holders of the NBA's best record, are hosting the Sacramento Kings, as they look to be the first NBA team to win 40 games this season. They're 39-13. At 10 o'clock, the Golden State Warriors are going to host the Houston Rockets. The Phoenix Suns are going to host the Washington Wizards. And last but not least, at the same time, the Portland Trail Blazers are going to host the Detroit Pistons. So that's everything that's going on with basketball. Staying within the arena, but of course shifting the context to the NHL, just to give a glimpse of what's going on out there. Of course, with every team having to play within their own division. Starting in the Eastern Division, the New Jersey Devils hosted the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Penguins were able to beat the Devils 6-4, led by their future Hall of Fame center, Sidney Crosby, who finished with a goal and 2 assists. Picking up their 26th win of the season, the Pittsburgh Penguins now hold the 3rd best record in the East Division, as they now trail the Washington Capitals and the New York Islanders by 2 points in the table. Speaking of the Islanders hosted the Rangers, and the Rangers were able to pull off a 4-1 win yesterday, as all 4 of their goals came in the last 2 periods. With their 19th win of the season, the New York Rangers now hold the 5th best record in the East, as they now trail the Capitals and Islanders by 13 points apiece. And then looking out to Buffalo, the Buffalo Sabres hosted the Washington Capitals. In this matchup, the Capitals would end up beating the Sabres 4-3 in a game that went all the way down to the wire. And with their 26th win of the season, the Washington Capitals are now tied with the New York Islanders for the best record in the East, now that the Islanders lost to the Rangers. So right now they're sitting at the very top, as they now sit 2 points ahead of the Pittsburgh Penguins, just to show how close the top 3 in the East is. And then jumping out west, just to show you what's going on out there, every single team in the West Division played. First off, the St. Louis Blues hosted the Minnesota Wild and were able to pull off a 9-1 win, as their center O'Reilly would finish with 3 goals and an assist. With their 18th win of the season, the St. Louis Blues now currently hold the 5th best record in the West Division as they now trail the Colorado Avalanche by 16 points in the table. Jumping out to Las Vegas, the Golden Knights hosted the Arizona Coyotes, and the Golden Knights were able to beat the Coyotes 7-4 at home. With their 26th win of the season, the Las Vegas Golden Knights now hold the 2nd best record in the West Division as they now trail the Colorado Avalanche by 4 points in the table with one less game played. And then, jumping out to Anaheim, the Anaheim Ducks hosted the Colorado Avalanche as the Avalanche were able to beat the Ducks 2-0 and blank them to keep the best record in the West. With this win, they now sit 4 points ahead of the second place Las Vegas Golden Knights at the very top of the West Division. And then last but not least, looking out to the last hockey game of last night, the San Jose Sharks hosted the Los Angeles Kings and were able to pull off a 5-2 win to pick up their 18th win of the season. With this win, the Sharks now hold the 6th best record in the division as they now sit 18 full points behind the Colorado Avalanche in the table. With that said, looking forward to what's going on with today's hockey, starting, of course, with the primetime matchups because today is Saturday. At 2 o'clock, the Philadelphia Flyers are going to host the Boston Bruins on ESPN+. At 8 o'clock, the Nashville Predators are going to host the Tampa Bay Lightning on ESPN+ as well. Outside of those games, the Dallas Stars are going to host the Florida Panthers at 2 o'clock. The Montreal Canadiens are going to host the Winnipeg Jets at 7 o'clock. At the same time, the Carolina Hurricanes are going to host the Detroit Red Wings. The Columbus Blue Jackets are going to host the Chicago Blackhawks. The Toronto Maple Leafs are going to host the Ottawa Senators. At 8 o'clock, the St. Louis Blues are going to host the Minnesota Wild. At 8:30, the Calgary Flames are going to host the Edmonton Oilers, led by the NHL's leading scorer, Connor McDavid. And then at 10:30, the San Jose Sharks are going to host the Los Angeles Kings in the SAP Center in San Jose. So that's currently what the NHL is looking like at the moment. Shifting context to what's going on with baseball as we take a look at what's going on with yesterday's Friday baseball. Starting in Tampa, the Rays hosted the New York Yankees and were able to pull off their 3rd win of the season after the Rays scored 9 of their 10 runs in the 4th inning to beat the Yankees 10-5. For the New York Yankees in this matchup, the start would go to their elite starting pitcher Corey Kluber, who would allow 3 earned runs in 2.1 innings pitched as he struck out 3 batters. With this loss, he is now 0-1 on the season. Their elite third baseman, DJ LeMahieu, would end up going 2 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs as he hit his first home run of the season. Their elite shortstop, Gleyber Torres, would go 1 for 4. Aaron Hicks, their center fielder, would go 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run as he hit his first home run of the season as well. For the Tampa Bay Rays, the win, of course, went to their starting pitcher, Rich Hill, the former Dodger, who allowed 4 earned runs in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters. Their left fielder, Austin Meadows, would go 3 for 4 with 2 runs. Their designated hitter, Yoshi Tsutsugo, would end up going 2 for 4 with 2 runs as well. Their elite right fielder, Randy Arozarena, would go 1 for 5 with an RBI and a run. Brandon Lau, their second baseman, would go 1 for 5 with 3 RBIs and a run. Wendell and Adames went 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run each as Willy Adames hit his first home run of the season. And with this win, the Tampa Bay Rays are now 3-4. That is looking at how the MLB is sitting. The Tampa Bay Rays now hold the 3rd best record in the American League East as they are now tied with the Yankees. They now sit 1 game behind the Baltimore Orioles and the Boston Red Sox at the top of the division. With this, like I said, they both have the same record. Jumping out to Los Angeles, the defending champions Los Angeles Dodgers, in addition to receiving their championship rings for the 2020 World Series, they were able to host the Washington Nationals and pick up their 6th win of the season, winning this game 1-0. The only score would come in the 6th inning off of a Justin Turner home run. For the Washington Nationals, their starting pitcher would be Joe Ross. In his major league debut, he would allow no earned runs in 5 innings pitched. He only allowed 2 hits. He struck out 4 batters in that time, and then the loss would, of course, go to Luis Avilan. For the Nationals themselves, their elite right fielder, Juan Soto, would go 2 for 3 on the day. And he was really kind of the only player that had more than 1 hit, except for Jonathan Lucroy, who went 2 for 3. For the LA Dodgers, the win went to their elite starting pitcher, Walker Buehler, who allowed no earned runs, allowed 6 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters. And then for the batters for LA, their elite shortstop, Corey Seager, would go 0 for 4 as he struck out twice. Their third baseman, Justin Turner, would go 3 for 3 with an RBI and a run, as the only scoring play was a walk-off home run from him. And with this win, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the defending champs, are now 6-2. They hold the best record in the NL West, as they now sit one game ahead of the second-place San Diego Padres. With this loss, the 2019 MLB champs, Washington Nationals, are now 1-3. They now hold the fourth best record in the NL East, as they now sit 2.5 games behind the first place Philadelphia Phillies in the division. Just to give a sense of where they are. Jumping out to San Francisco, the San Francisco Giants hosted the Colorado Rockies and won this game 3-1, as all of the runs scored came in the last 3 innings. For the Giants, it was a 2-run double to get it started, and then they jumped up 3-0. And then for the Rockies, they just wouldn't be able to put in enough scoring. For the Rockies, the loss will go to their starting pitcher, Austin Gomber, who allowed 2 earned runs in 6 innings pitches. He struck out 5. He only allowed 1 hit. With this loss, he's now 0-2 on the season. Their elite starting right fielder, Charlie Blackmon, will go 0 for 3 as he struck out once. No one on the Rockies would finish with more than 1 hit on the day. For the San Francisco Giants, the win will go to their starting pitcher, Johnny Cueto, who allowed 1 earned run in 8.2 innings pitched. He basically pitched up until the last out as he struck out 7 batters. With this win, he's now 1-0 on the season. For their batters, their first baseman, Brandon Belt, would, of course, go 1 for 1 with a run. Their future Hall of Fame catcher, Buster Posey, would go 2 for 3 with a run. Their shortstop, Brandon Crawford, would go 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs, two of the 3. And with this win, and also the save went to their relief pitcher, Jake McGee. Jake McGee now has 3 saves on the year. With this win, the San Francisco Giants are now 4-3. That is the third best record in the NL West, as they now trail the first place defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers by 1.5 games in the division. With this loss, the Colorado Rockies are now 3-5. That is the fourth best record in the National League West, as they now trail the defending champs by 3 games in the division. Jumping out to Buffalo, the Toronto Blue Jays hosted the Los Angeles Angels, and the Angels would beat the Blue Jays 7-1 after scoring 4 runs in the second period, or in the second inning. And then they would score 3 in the 5th inning. Of course, Shohei Ohtani being the biggest batter for the Angels today. Starting off with how the Blue Jays played, they mostly pitched out of their bullpen, as their starting pitcher Phelps would only pitch 1 inning. Out of their hitters, their elite first baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will go 1 for 2 as he walked twice. Not much going on for them hitting-wise, as they were unable to log an RBI for the day. For the Los Angeles Angels, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Andrew Heaney, who would allow no earned runs in 6 innings pitched, as he struck out 9 batters. He only allowed 3 hits in those 6 innings. So with his win, he's now 1-1 on the season. Their designated hitter, Shohei Ohtani, would go 2 for 5 with 4 RBIs and a run, as he hit his 3rd home run of the season. Their first baseman, Jared Walsh, would go 2 for 3 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs, as he hit his 3rd home run of the season. Their goated center fielder, Mike Trout, would go 2 for 4 with a run on the day, as he also finished with a walk. And their elite third baseman, Anthony Rendon, would go 2 for 4 with a walk. With this win, the Los Angeles Angels are now 6-2. They are now tied with the Houston Astros for the best record in the American League West, as they both sit 2.5 games ahead of the Texas Rangers and the Seattle Mariners. With this loss, the Toronto Blue Jays now hold the worst record in the American League East, as they now sit 1.5 games behind the AL East leading Baltimore Orioles and Boston Red Sox at the moment. Jumping out to Cleveland, the Cleveland Indians hosted the Detroit Tigers and were able to pull off a 4-1 win after scoring 3 of their 4 runs in the first inning. And 2 of them would come off of a Franmil Reyes home run. And then in the 6th inning, they would score off a second Franmil Reyes home run, as he was the hero for Cleveland today. For Detroit, their starting pitcher Holland would only pitch about 2.2 innings on the day. Their starting shortstop Willie Castro would be the only player on the team that logged more than 1 hit, as he went 2 for 4 for the day. Their catcher Wilson Ramos would go 1 for 3 with an RBI and a run, as he had the only RBI of the day, and he hit his 3rd home run of the season yesterday. For the Cleveland Indians, the win would go to their starting pitcher Zach Plesac, who allowed no earned runs and only 3 hits in 7 innings pitched, as he struck out 6 batters on the day. Out of their hitters, their elite third baseman Jose Ramirez would go 2 for 4 on the day. Their designated hitter Franmil Reyes would be the biggest star of the game as he finished 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs, and with his 2 home runs on the day, he now has 3 on the season. With this win, the Cleveland Indians are now 3-3 at 500. They are tied with the Kansas City Royals and the Chicago White Sox, all at 500, as they sit a game and a half behind the first place Minnesota Twins in the division. Jumping out to Atlanta, with this loss, the Detroit Tigers are now 3-4. They now hold the worst record in the American League Central, as the Tigers now sit 2 games behind the Minnesota Twins. Jumping out to Atlanta, the Atlanta Braves hosted the Philadelphia Phillies. After the Phillies took a 1-0 lead and they were going into the 5th inning, the Braves would score 8 runs to win this game 8-1 starting from the 5th inning on to pick up their 3rd win of the season. For the Philadelphia Phillies, the loss will go to their starting pitcher, Zach Wheeler, who allowed 3 runs in 4.2 innings as he struck out 4 batters on the entire day. Their elite right fielder, Bryce Harper, will go 0 for 2 as he walked twice. The only player that logged more than one hit was their catcher, JT Realmuto, as he finished 2 for 4 as he struck out twice. For the Atlanta Braves, the win went to their former starting pitcher, Charlie Morton, who allowed 1 earned run in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters in his first win back in Atlanta. For the Atlanta Braves, their elite right fielder, Ronald Acuna Jr., will go 4 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run. He hit his 3rd home run of the season. He also finished with 2 doubles on the day as well. Their elite second baseman, Ozzie Albies, would go 1 for 5 as he finished with 2 runs. Their elite first baseman, reigning National League MVP, Freddie Freeman, would go 1 for 4 as he finished with 2 RBIs and a run. Freddie Freeman would go on to hit his 2nd home run of the season. And then their elite left fielder, Marcell Ozuna, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI. Their pitcher, Charlie Morton, would go 1 for 2 with a run as a hitter. And then their pinch hitter, Ehire Adrianza, would hit his first home run of the season he hit his first home run for the Braves as he went 1 for 1 with 3 RBIs and a run, with, of course, a 3-run pinch home run in the bottom of the 6th to blow this game wide open. With this win, the Atlanta Braves are now 3-4. That is the 3rd best record in the NL East, as they now trail the first place Philadelphia Phillies by 2 games in the division. With this loss, the Philadelphia Phillies, like I said, they're 5-2, holding the best record in the NL East, as they now sit a game and a half ahead of the 2nd place New York Mets at the moment. Jumping out to Dallas, the Texas Rangers hosted the San Diego Padres, and behind the San Diego Padres starting pitcher Joe Musgrove, they were able to no-hit the Rangers and win this game 3-0. They would score all 3 of their runs in the first 3 innings, and the scoring would remain relatively same for the last 6 innings. For the Texas Rangers in this matchup, their losing pitcher, of course, would be Kohei Arihara. Kohei Arihara would allow 2 earned runs in 4 innings pitched as he struck out only 1 batter on the day. And like I said, no one for the Texas Rangers was able to log a single hit for the day. Their third baseman, Tejada, would strike out 3 times as well. And then for Joe Musgrove, he would allow no earned runs, no hits, no walks either, as he struck out 10 batters in 9 innings pitched. The only reason that he didn't get a perfect game is that he actually hit a batter, which doesn't count as a walk. He got a hit by pitch, which was kind of sad. But at the end of the day, he was still able to pull off the no-hitter. Big win for San Diego. Their center fielder Trent Grisham will go 2 for 4 with a run. Their elite third baseman Manny Machado will go 1 for 4 with an RBI on the day. Their right fielder Will Myers will go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run as well. With this win, the San Diego Padres are now 5-3. That is the 2nd best record in the National League West, as they trail the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers by a game in the division. And with this loss, the Texas Rangers are now 3-4. That is the 3rd. They're now tied with the Seattle Mariners for the 3rd best record in the American League West, as both these teams trail the Houston Astros and the Los Angeles Angels by 2.5 games so far. Jumping out to Houston, the Houston Astros hosted the Oakland Athletics, and the Athletics were able to get their 2nd win of the season, beating the Astros 6-2 with 5 of their 6 runs coming in the last 2 innings. Of course, it would end up in the 8th inning, it was a 3-run home run from Matt Olson, and in the 9th inning, it was a 2-run home run from Mark Hanna to help them from jumping back from their not so great start to the season. Looking at how the Houston Astros fared, Lance McCullers Jr. would make the start. He would not get the decision. He allowed 1 earned run in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters on the day. The loss went to Abreu, their relief pitcher. Their elite second baseman, Jose Altuve, would go 2 for 4 with an RBI on the day. Their elite third baseman, Alex Bregman, would go 0 for 4. And then their shortstop, Carlos Correa, will go 2 for 4 for himself. For the Oakland Athletics, Sean Manaea would get the start, but he would not get the decision. He only allowed 1 earned run in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters on the day. Their left fielder, Mark Canha, would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs. He hit his second home run of the season. Jed Lowry, their second baseman, went 2 for 5 with an RBI and a run. He hit his first home run of the season, and Matt Olson, their first baseman, went 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs and a run. Matt Olson hit his first home run of the season as well. With this win, the Oakland Athletics are now 2-7. That is the worst record in the American League West, as they now trail the Houston Astros and the LA Angels by 4.5 games in the division. And with this loss, the Astros are now 6-2, tied with the Los Angeles Angels for the best record in the American League West division at the moment. Jumping out to Phoenix, the Arizona Diamondbacks hosted the Cincinnati Reds, and in a game that went all the way to the 10th inning, it would be the Cincinnati Reds that pulled ahead off of a Tucker Barnhart go-ahead single. For the Arizona Diamondbacks in this matchup, Widener would get the start as he allowed 3 earned runs in 5 innings pitched, striking out 3 batters on the day. For the Diamondbacks, their biggest performer from the plate would be their second baseman, Eduardo Escobar, who finished 2 for 5 on the day with 2 RBIs and 2 runs. He hit his second home run of the season. And then for the Cincinnati Reds, Maile would make the start as he struck out 6 batters in 4 innings pitched, allowing no earned runs on the day. Their left fielder, Adam Winkler, would go 3 for 3 with an RBI and a run for him. Their outfielder, Tyler Naquin, will go 1 for 3 with an RBI and 2 runs as he hit his 5th home run of the season for the Reds. Their elite shortstop, Eugenio Suarez, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run for himself. And then their catcher, Tucker Barnhart, would finish 3 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run for himself. With this win, the Cincinnati Reds are now 6-1. That is the best record in the National League Central. So far, they're the only team in the National League and the American League, for that matter, with only 1 loss thus far through the season. They have the best win percentage. And in the division, they currently sit 1 game ahead of the second-place St. Louis Cardinals. And with this loss, the Arizona Diamondbacks are now 2-6. That is the worst record in the National League West, as they trail the defending champs, Los Angeles Dodgers, by 4 total games in the division. But with that said, that's virtually everything that's going on with baseball leading into today. And of course, looking out to today's matchups, because today is Saturday. I'm going to start with the primetime matchups, of course, to look forward to. And of course, starting out at 7:05, the Texas Rangers will host the San Diego Padres on ESPN+, and I believe that's the only game on primetime. At 1 o'clock, the New York Mets, the Mets will host the Miami Marlins in this NL East showdown. At 1:10, the Tampa Bay Rays will host the New York Yankees as Chris Archer looks to get his first win for the Tampa Bay Rays this season. At 2:10, the Chicago White Sox look to host the Kansas City Royals as both teams look to break 500 at the moment. At the same time, the Minnesota Twins are going to host the Seattle Mariners as Yusei Kikuchi faces off against Michael Pineda, looking to get his second win. At 2:15, the St. Louis Cardinals are going to host the Milwaukee Brewers. Carlos Martinez looks to get his first win of the season. At 4:05, the San Francisco Giants are going to host the Colorado Rockies. The same time, the Houston Astros are going to host the Oakland Athletics as the Astros look to get even with the Athletics for the series. At 6:10, the Cleveland Indians are going to host the Detroit Tigers on Progressive Field. At 6:35, the Pittsburgh Pirates will host the Chicago Cubs as Zach Davies looks to get his second win. At 7:05, the Baltimore Orioles will host the Boston Red Sox as Garrett Richards looks to get his first win. He did not have a great start the first time. At 7:07, the Toronto Blue Jays are going to host the Los Angeles Angels in Florida as Steven Matz looks to get his second win. At 7:20, the Atlanta Braves are going to host the Philadelphia Phillies as their young pitcher Ian Anderson looks to get his first win. Same with Zach Eflin. And then at 8:10, the Arizona Diamondbacks will host the Cincinnati Reds, who are currently the only team in the MLB with only 1 loss, sitting at 6-1. And then at 9:10, the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers will host the Washington Nationals as Julio Urias looks to get his second win as a starting pitcher for the Dodgers. And with that said, that's virtually everything that's going on with baseball today. But looking out to what's going on internationally to see what's going on with the world of soccer, just to give a glance into how a lot of these teams are faring. Looking out to the only game that actually meant something yesterday, Lille, the top team in France, went to face off against Metz, and they pulled off a 2-0 win. To create temporary separation from them and PSG. With one more game played on the table, they now sit 6 points ahead, which puts all the pressure in the world on PSG to, of course, win out. Of course, win this matchup today. But looking forward first to what's going on in Ligue 1 in these matchups at the very top of the table, because the top of the French league is actually very close. Today at 11, PSG will face off against Strasbourg. Strasbourg is currently holding the 13th best record in France, so a win here could put PSG to 3 points right under Lille once again, just to show you what's going on in France. Looking on to what's going on today in the Premier League. First off, at 7:30, Manchester City will host Leeds United. Manchester City currently holds the best record in the Premier League as they sit 14 points ahead of second place Man U with one more game played in the table. So, of course, a win here could put all the pressure in the world on the rest of the teams in the Premier League as they're virtually super close to running away with the Premier League at the moment. At 10 o'clock, Liverpool will host Aston Villa. Aston Villa holds the 9th best record. Liverpool holds the 7th. A win here could temporarily put them above Tottenham and Chelsea for the 5th best spot. And that would put pressure on Chelsea and Tottenham to win their games. It's because Chelsea will face off against Crystal Palace at Crystal Palace at 12:30. Crystal Palace is the 13th best team in the Premier League, but of course all the pressure is on Chelsea because of how close the Europa League and Champions League teams are sitting in the top 7, top 8 in the Premier League. Jumping out to the Bundesliga, the reigning Bundesliga champs Bayern Munich will host Union Berlin in a rematch of the first Bayern Munich game that I went to. Bayern Munich currently sits at the very top of the Bundesliga, 7 points over second place Leipzig after they beat Leipzig not that long ago. And Union Berlin currently holds the 7th best record in Germany. So this will be a very important game because Union Berlin is still fighting for their Europa League lives at the moment. And Bayern Munich, of course, a win here would put a lot more pressure on the other top teams in the Bundesliga to chase them for the title. Speaking of, RB Leipzig face Werder Bremen at 9:30 as they hold the 2nd best record. Like I said, they're 7 points behind, so the pressure is on them to win their game. And then at 12:30, Borussia Dortmund will face off against VfB Stuttgart. Dortmund's currently holding the 5th best record in the Bundesliga as they're tied with Leverkusen at the moment. But they sit 7 points behind 4th place Eintracht Frankfurt as they're still fighting for a Champions League spot. But a win here would be very important. Like, they cannot draw or lose in this game at all. That would be the end for them. So that's currently what the German soccer league is looking like. Looking out at Serie A, AC Milan's going to face off against Parma. AC Milan sitting with the 2nd best record in Italy as Parma holds the 2nd worst. A win here would it would move them closer to Inter Milan. It seems as though Inter is going to run away with the league this year, but they still sit 1 point ahead of Juventus. So, of course, a win here would put more pressure on the teams below them. So, of course, it will be very interesting to see how the Serie A shapes up with how this game finishes out. And then in La Liga, it will be a matchup of El Clasico at 3 o'clock between Real Madrid and FC Barcelona, as this is probably going to be one of the El Clasicos that carries the most weight. Looking at how the La Liga is situated, all teams have 9 games left in the season. Barcelona and Real Madrid currently hold the 2nd and 3rd seeds behind Atletico Madrid. Barcelona currently sits 1 point behind Atletico Madrid, and Atletico Madrid does not play today. So for the very first time this season, Barcelona could temporarily take the top of the table with Real Madrid, because Real Madrid doesn't have the goal differential it has a lower goal differential than Atletico Madrid. Real Madrid sits 3 points below Atletico Madrid, so if they beat Barcelona, they'd still be 2nd in the table temporarily. But that's currently how close La Liga is, so it's very important for both teams. If both teams want to win La Liga, winning this game is very crucial, especially with a single-digit amount of games left in the season. So, of course, that's going to be the big performance to look out for. But that's everything that you got to know for today. Saturday, April 10th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and I want to thank everyone for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you tomorrow with another one. Peace out.